Hi, listeners. Welcome back to the Property Management Show podcast. Today, Marie and I will be interviewing Berit and Milissa from RentScale.
They will be talking to us about leaky sales funnels, and they will share how to identify symptoms of a leaky sales funnel and give us some insights on what you can do to plug those holes so that your business can grow, scale, and profit more.
If that sounds like it piques your interest, stick around. This will be a great listen.
This podcast episode is sponsored by PM Grow Summit 2020. It's the 4th annual conference for growth-minded property management entrepreneurs. Save $250 if you register by October 25, 2019. So go to pmgrowsummit.com today.
So we have Berit and Milissa with RentScale here. Hey guys, thank you for joining us. We're so excited to have you. Before we kick off the topic on bottlenecks to profitability, leaky sales funnel, can you guys just tell us a little bit about who you guys are and your experience in the property management industry and just sales in general? Just a little tidbit.
Yeah, perfect. So my name is Milissa, and I work as a scale consultant for RentScale, as does Berit. We both do the same sort of job. My past experience, I have 7 years of sales experience working in all different types of industries. So passionate about sales and the processes. And so, yeah, working with RentScale, I meet with property management companies across the country and kind of consult with them on their sales processes.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm Berit, and I also do the same thing. I talk with property management owners all over the country about how to optimize their sales process. And in the past, I have like a sales passion. So I've been a sales trainer in different industries, run different franchises, and love property management because of that recurring income stream. I think that's one of the coolest things about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always nice to talk to people that, not that we haven't, but people that are passionate about what they're talking about. I feel like fortunately for us, we have been very privileged to talk to a lot of people that are super passionate about what they're doing. So we're really excited to hear your guys' thoughts on bottlenecks to profitability. I keep saying profitability. I can say it how I want, but the leaky sales funnel. So what? Yeah, profitability. We're gonna switch it up. That's how we're gonna say it from now on. But so I guess we're kind of ready to dive in. We want to hear a little bit about your opinions on what is a leaky sales funnel? What does that even mean?
Totally. So what we all know kind of what a sales funnel is. So when there are people essentially dropping off and not becoming customers, when you have a nice crop of leads at the top of your funnel, not your top of your funnel, and you have a nice crop of leads coming in, and then you realize your conversion rate is a lot smaller than you expected, you're kind of like, whoops, where are they going? There's got to be some leaks there. They've got to be slipping out. And where are those cracks?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like this visual of like a bucket, and everything would like be super great if it stayed in there and stayed throughout that funnel. But there's these holes in the bucket, and for some reason they're coming out at all different angles. So really, like, there's issues why that lead is going through that hole. So that's kind of what you can visualize when you think of a leaky funnel.
Nice. And so to connect it to, let's say, like the bottom line, right, of a property management business, what does that mean for the existence of a leaky sales funnel and how it relates to the business?
A lot of managers, owners, broker owners are paying for leads every month, and they're putting a budget towards leads, and they're looking at how much money they spent per month on leads and really how many signed contracts they got from those numbers of leads. And so when we look at the leaky funnel, we're kind of looking at the sales process itself. There are many, it's not just like they come through your website and then all of a sudden they become a customer or they don't.
Right.
There's stages to that sales process. And we're looking at where are the holes or the leaks as they move down the pipeline. Maybe it's a call and then a consultation and then a signed agreement. And where are they sticking with you the whole time? When they're not, they're leaking out.
Well, and it probably goes, this might go without saying, I don't know, but I feel like a lot of property managers don't always look at the sales funnel. They just look at business that they're closing. So if they feel like they're closing a lot of business, they don't know there's a problem. And maybe there isn't, but without understanding your sales funnel, that could definitely be lost opportunity.
Yeah, and so to Brittany's point, right? It's very easy to fall into the trap of just figuring out, well, it feels like I'm closing enough leads, but then not looking at the bigger picture, which is, okay, well, how much money am I spending? How many leads do I actually have coming into my funnel? Is what I'm closing, does it make sense? Am I maximizing the leads that are coming in? And so what would you say are the common symptoms of a leak in the sales funnel? Because if people aren't even looking at the bigger picture, it's hard to really know that there's something to fix. And so based on your guys' experience, what have you seen?
Yeah, I think the one thing you said too before is like profitability, right? So that's really huge when it comes to owners, and they're really looking at kind of the money they're spending and then what's coming in. And if it's good to them, that's good to them. But it does come down to that sales process. And so when you kind of think of different leaks throughout it, some people know and some people don't. And I think some of the ones to almost like look out for that could be like, I need to dial in on this, would be your conversion rates. Would be number one, but then also different like stalls throughout that process, right? So you might be like, all of these people like have said yes to me, or we had a great conversation, but for some reason I can't get them back on the phone. So there's an issue there. That's a leak. But then even when you get to something, say they move on to that on-site consult, like a definitive step in that sales process, why did they come and meet with me and show me their property and now they're not signing? Was it something I did wrong? Did I not close them properly? So there could be leaks all over, but those are just some of the things to really look at. But when it comes to that, it's really like Berit said, making sure, first of all, you know what your sales process is. And if you don't, I would advise to kind of think about it and put it in a visual, like what are these definitive steps that someone is talking to me about and how are they moving through? First, I would do that. And then second, like dial in on each of those a little bit. Like look at the types of conversations you're having. Are those, questions you're asking? Are you asking good questions? Are you answering the questions properly? Are you speaking to, we always talk about this, your ideal client, right? Because if someone is even coming into your funnel, that's someone you shouldn't be even speaking to. It's someone you don't even want to work with. That's going to affect conversion rates too.
I have a quick question. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Berit, you first.
Oh, no, that's when you were saying like, we're all on piggybacking on exactly what Melissa's saying. We're all about helping companies to grow and scale. And then when you asked, Brittany, what about when they don't even know that how many came in prior, they just are focusing on how many they're closing. That's natural because that's where your attention goes because those are the ones closing. But when it comes to growing and scaling, you can't grow what you can't measure. So it's about not looking at the bottom of the funnel, but looking from the very top, like Melissa was describing, and from the time the leads come in, what are those stages that they go through to become a client? And that's kind of what you need to measure to find out if your funnel is leaking.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's so easy to get excited when you get deals too. You're like, yay, business is closing. It's not as much fun to look at the leaky leads that are coming through.
Well, it's also easy to blame it on, there were bad leads anyway.
Yeah. That's something we've talked about before. Bad leads. What is a bad lead? Is it bad because you had a super good conversation with them and then you were never able to get them on the phone again? So that's probably something, well, not probably, for sure, something you would identify in your sales process and like catching those.
So I'll say this, and I'm sure Melissa has more to say about this as well. So what is a bad lead, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of what is a good lead, what is a bad lead? We really talk to companies a lot about positioning and actually making sure that you are setting up a way to walk that lead through the sales funnel in a way that positions your company and attracts the leads that you want. So, property management companies are serving investors who want to be very hands-off and live somewhere totally different, or they're serving accidental landlords who never planned this. And what you say to that lead and the way you pick up the phone and describe your service, or the way you put out phrases on your website should be positioned to attract the right leads. And so good leads and bad leads, it depends on where the lead is coming from, but it also, we have found the most successful companies are able to get the leads that they want when they're able to speak the language through their marketing and through that initial phone call that positions their business to serve them. Does that make sense?
Totally.
That totally makes sense. I'm pretty sure Brittany has a lot of stories about this. Part of our process here at 4.5 is to help our customers, identify their perfect client or like ideal client, right? And during that conversation, when we're asking them, okay, of all the owners that you've ever worked with, like which are the ones who would want to keep working with? And the instinctive answer is, well, anyone who has like a property in my city. And it's like, well, let's dig deeper. Let's peel the onion. It takes work to peel the onion, but once you get to the core, you realize that it's less stressful once you understand your ideal client, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not just for marketing, as you guys were saying, it also impacts sales. So
100% it impacts sales. Yeah. Melissa, I'm sure you have stuff to say.
No, it's funny because this whole conversation is about like how to find the leaks. Well, that's like one of the number one leaks, that you don't know who your ideal client is. And so we kind of joke about like, if there was this property management company out there who only wanted to work with yellow houses that have 2 stories and 1 front door and only 3 windows, guess what? That company is probably going to be a lot more profitable than someone who is working with yellow houses and red houses and blue houses, because it's an ideal client and you're putting out the message. If I was a yellow house, I would most likely call you, as opposed to, I'm working with every different company. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because at RentScale, the owners of the company, both Jeremy and Jordan, they don't want us to talk to anyone who isn't in growth mode. So when we talk about kind of positioning, we say that we work with 200 to 2,000 doors who are looking to double their door count in 1 to 3 years. And so if that's appealing to you, we want to talk to you. If it isn't, we can tighten up those leaks within ours, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because to your point, right? So when you say that even you guys only talk to companies who are in growth mode, if I am a property management company owner who only has 2 doors and I'm not really sure if this is for me, but I just want like some help, I'm not maybe your perfect client because I'm not sure that I want to grow. I'm not sure if I want to do this. So same with the property management company owner, like, are you sure you want to work with, people who inherited a property, or would you rather focus on a different type of owner? And if you don't really know, then it's hard to tell if you want to keep taking on these types of, houses, because would they care about maintenance if, they inherited the property? It's 2 extremes, right? Like they don't care because they just want the money, or they care so much because they grew up there and, they want to be super controlling about who's sleeping in Nana's bedroom or something. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong about that. It's just, you just know that there are different types of owners out there.
Yes. Yeah. And what you're saying, it feels so good when you're working with the clients that you're best fit to serve. And what you were saying, it goes into the marketing to attract the leads. And you were saying, and it even goes into the sales process. And we absolutely need to wire the entire sales process towards that one personality, that one type of client that we really want to serve. So there's different personalities that you want to work with. And when you have like a high pumping sales engine, you can actually be, you could curate your portfolio and be kind of choosy about who you pick and take on. And like, just to make it concrete, we have, we've worked with some clients, and for example, one of, their ideal unique selling propositions to attract their client is the no fear property manager. So they're going to be very, very, help the conservative client who's really nervous, right? Because they have some excellent guarantees and insurance policies that they offer. Whereas another company is the same day property manager. So they deal with the personality that's like, get it done. I want to know the answers. I want it now. And they can be there because they have the capacity to be picking up the phone and answering every single question immediately. Yeah. So it's really like you have such a higher chance and you have a guarantee of converting the person that you want to work with when you position your entire process.
Well, and not only do you have a higher chance to convert those people into clients, you have a higher chance of keeping them as clients.
Exactly.
Because you're like setting expectations. I feel like most of the companies that I work with that know their perfect client and know the people that they want to go after, they just are so much happier because their clients get them. They get why they do things a certain way.
That's such a good point, Brittany. Then the churn is lower and everybody's happier.
Yeah.
You're happy, the owner's happier that they're keeping the client, and the customer is happier that
Yeah.
they are just getting the service they want. Yeah.
Your property managers are happier because they're not having to explain to someone why they need to repair their toilet.
Yeah, because a lot of times,
whatever the situation is that they don't want to spend money on.
Yeah, because property managers, their job is to manage property, but having to defend why you exist to an owner every month is like,
and that will
too
happen
much.
if you don't have your right owner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so that's perfect. Sorry, Berit, go for it. We're all so excited about this.
Yeah.
A lot of problems are solved when you can fix that one leak alone.
Yeah.
That's just one. We've only talked about one leak, and we're so passionate about that leak.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny too, because when you think about it, obviously we're a marketing company. We work with a lot of property managers because that's what we do, property management marketing. But it's so funny when I talk to new clients and they explain their experiences with just the quality of leads or the clients that they get not being what they expected, and them not being what the property management company not being what the property owner expected. But then you look at their website and their marketing, and it does kind of, it's very general. Mm-hmm. So I'm just kind of repeating what we just said already, but it's just like it resonates a lot with me in terms of just like conversations I've had with people.
Yeah. And there's a reason why it's such a big and common leak, because it's kind of simple, right? It's like, oh, of course you need to know who you want to target, but because it's so simple, it's so easy to assume that like, oh, I have this gut feel of who it is. But I think the important piece is like to write it down on paper, because until you write it down in paper, it stays kind of fuzzy in the back of your head.
Or type it on your phone in the notes section if you lose paper.
I'm old school.
Yeah,
so I'll lose
paper. Or type it in a playbook like we do.
Yeah, exactly. Type it up, whatever works for you. But I'm just making fun of you because you're with your paper.
I like paper. I love trees, but I do recycle paper. And so speaking about leaks, so we hit on like a really big one, which is not knowing your ideal client. Mm-hmm. So what are the other common leaks that you've observed that are prevalent in the property management industry?
So that specificity of attracting leads, speaking to that ideal client when you're just bringing them in, extends to the phone conversation. If you can't, there's usually an initial phone call. And that specificity extends to an on-site consultation. And that specificity extends to how do you follow up when they didn't get back to you about signing the agreement. So there are many more areas for leaks along the sales process. And it's great when you can attract them and bring in the right people. And then there's a lot in writing on whether they convert or not, depending on how you are conducting those next stages of the process.
So essentially, sorry, Melissa, I was just going to say, does that mean in terms of consistency with the messaging? So you're saying when you present your brand, who you are, why people should work with you, are you saying that during the sales process, you just need to be consistent with that messaging, and that's one way that people can fall through?
Yeah, not only the messaging, but also how you conduct speaking to the pain of that particular personality and that particular customer in your language on the call, in your language on the on-site, etc.
Right.
So you're saying is like you have to keep reinforcing it. Like you don't have to keep saying like the same line over and over and over, but it's more of like if every single thing you do throughout the sales process is like colored by the idea that you're talking to this one type of owner and being consistent with that, that's like the key to plugging those holes. Am I understanding it right?
Yes. The way you overcome an objection from certain type of client is different than the objections you'll get from another type of client. Would you agree, Milissa?
Yeah, I'm also trying to think of it like also very high level. So when we talk about, the ideal client and that leads and everything Berit's saying, that all goes hand in hand as you're kind of going through this process, right? But what it really comes down to, I think, is there's so many different types of leaks, and it's hard to pinpoint unless you actually have a system, right? So you can have like, I'm so like visual. I went to school to be like a teacher, so I'm like using hands and like pictures. I should have gotten like some kind of like flip chart here.
Yeah.
And like, if you can picture like this one bucket, right? This is your system. If you have an ideal client that goes into this bucket and your system is the same each time you do it, then you're going to discover different leaks, right? But if you have this like ideal client and you're putting them in different buckets and you're not even sure how to like systematize or have definitive steps in your sales process, you are never going to find those leaks. So you just need to make sure you have something, and then you'll find out kind of what leaks you have. Once you have a bucket and you're consistent in, this is what I'm doing, this is the next step, this is the next step, then you dive into those steps and you'll find your different leaks. You'll find what's not working, or we're doing something wrong here, and you fix them. But I think without having something consistent that you're doing each and every time a lead comes in, I mean, that's what it is. It's a system. Yeah.
You're totally right, Melissa.
Or my emotions are making sense to you.
I love it.
So it sounds a little bit like, I mean, one of the biggest issues or biggest leaks is, not knowing your ideal client, but then the other piece is like not having like a single system to process these leads through, right? So it's not necessarily that in our analogy, it fails to become a leak because like it's basically, you don't have the right funnel to begin with, kind of, right? It's its own problem because we're talking about, holes in the funnel, but that assumes you have like the funnel. But if you don't even have the funnel, you have tiny buckets to catch different drips from, right? Then it like doesn't.
Yeah. And once you have that funnel and the leaks, you can kind of look at them, but it's also tracking it too, right? So some people we speak to don't really have a CRM to track it. And that's really important too. So figuring out, your system, your steps, and then tracking it. And if you, don't know who to reach out to for CRMs, like we know this guy who kind of like knows this guy that might work for our company. So
might be named Jordan. Yeah.
I think we know that guy too.
Yeah. It's important to be able to track too, because if you can't track your kind of steps, you're not
and something that we've seen happen a lot is people try to implement it, like the owner will try to implement a CRM, and then they'll try to they won't have a BDM, they'll try to get the property managers to use it, or they'll have a BDM, but there's not really a lot of oversight or analysis into it. It's just kind of, and I'm not sure how many times I've seen this, but I have heard people kind of vent about it before, saying, I really don't even know where to start because I'm not a salesperson. And then I see in Lead Simple that my BDM is sending emails and putting them in stages, but what does that mean to me? It's like, how do you oversee that if you're not a salesperson?
Right. How do you oversee that if it's just sort of happening and it's happening under your purview, but you kind of don't know what success looks like, or you hope your hope is not a strategy, right? Like you're like hoping the leads will convert and you kind of don't know why. So it's interesting because so many property managers, they have excellent systems for the operation sides of things, for the maintenance. I mean, the business vitality of the business depends and thrives on operations, for accounting, for maintenance, for leasing. And then when it comes to the sales side, we often overlook the value of operationalizing the sales, because there is so much, you might have a BDM or someone who's working part-time, taking sales calls, who's sort of winging it. And the CRM is one part of it. It starts with, what is your bucket? What is that bucket? And how do we create a bulletproof, airtight, watertight bucket that involves a CRM, a very clear, unique selling proposition, and a very effective phone call consultation and follow-up. And that's when you have that predictability rather than just winging it.
Totally.
I think too, when you think of an owner who doesn't quite understand their process, or they have a BDM who's doing it and they're kind of putting it in their hands, like Berit said, this is kind of when you might want to reflect and actually put something into place, because what we try to do is we help you scale your business, right? So we create something that the owner is aware of, and it's something that's teachable and repeatable, so that the owner can almost get out of this. They are aware of how this needs to happen. But we always think too, like that BDM or that salesperson, we hope that nothing happens, but you never know if they're going to leave, or, you know, maybe you even have to hire an additional BDM because you are growing and that one BDM cannot take all of those leads. They're not paying attention to all of them. So you need to hire an additional. So as the owner, just like you can operationalize everything else, it's great to operationalize the sales and really be a part of that, because we like to work with the owners because it's their vision, right? It's what they want for their company. So it's something that is scalable.
I think it goes back to what you were saying about just write it down. It's like identify the perfect client, map out your sales process, but also just having that, like the handbook that you guys are talking about. I think that's so important. It makes it so much easier to follow too.
And I think something that I've observed too, working with a lot of property management company owners is, they hire a BDM, and that, let's say like they get Lead Simple as their CRM, and they feel like, okay, my BDM should be able to figure it out, right? Because like that's what I pay them to do. And it has some truth to that in terms of, yes, your BDM's job is to figure out how to close as many leads that come in as possible. But as you guys mentioned, the property management company owners are the ones with the vision, right? And so if they're the ones with the vision, they need to be involved in planning what the process should be and make sure it's in line with the vision. Because yeah, you have a BDM, but if the broker owner is not involved in identifying the ideal client, what if the BDM comes up with a completely different ideal client, right? Like just gauging, and then you get all these owners that quit after a year, and then your operations staff like hate the BDM for bringing in all these problematic leads, and then you have an issue with morale, and then it just falls apart, right? And then you fire your BDM because like, oh, the BDM wasn't good, and then you hire another one, and it's like a vicious cycle. But right? So if I think if you set up the groundwork and you are involved in the planning stages, then you know that if the BDM doesn't work out, it's a BDM. It's not the process, versus like mixing it.
100%. Yeah, you're describing like the apocalypse of like property management, like sales and management. Like it's a vicious cycle. You described it beautifully. It's like, what do you do? And it's just spiraling. And I actually don't agree with property managers who think it's the salesperson's job, the BDM's job, to figure out the CRM. I mean, because a great salesperson wants to come in and say, tell me the system, let me know what success looks like, let me know what to, and they'll bring their skills, they'll bring their experience, but the CRM is a very concrete, basic infrastructure tool that they can use to communicate what's going on with the leads. But their job is to execute the process. Like execute the process in a really great way. And the process, like you said, Marie, reflects the owner's vision for the company.
What's so interesting is when you actually do have something like that too, you will attract like high quality salespeople. Like salespeople want to jump into a job where like they know what they're doing, right? Like if that is something that they jump into that job and, this is what I need to go through, this is how I'm training. It's a lot more attractive to hire too when you have something like that in place, as opposed to, okay, I have no idea what we're doing. Here you go. Here's our CRM. So just something that came up too, and we're kind of talking about the sales process and like the BDM's role within it.
Yeah, because you want to start selling, you want to make money. It's like, let's do this. You're not there
to build a process.
To operationalize things.
To operationalize.
Yeah.
Different side of the brain. And that even allows you to hire someone who has maybe never been in the property management industry, but is a top salesperson. When you set up a solid system, it allows you to attract top salespeople, even if they're not from the property management industry. I mean, ideally they are, but even if they're not, you have like a whole window of a larger window of talent, because then you can tell them, hey, this is our system. this is what we established and know works. Come in and work your magic on this proven system. And that's how you open up the window to attract more types of talent.
For sure. I have a question going back to conversion rates for a second. This question's kind of like been dwindling in my mind for a little while when we talked about it a couple minutes ago, or maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes ago now. So when we're talking about the sales funnel and a leaky sales funnel, and we're looking at how many deals you're converting, what if you're just starting to build that funnel? Is it normal for the conversion rate to be a little bit lower because the sales process is longer? Like how does that kind of play into account when you're talking about the conversion rates? If it's like a new person or if you're just getting leads in there?
Yeah. And also, like, I think this is a big question we always get when we're helping property management company owners set up their lead simple. A lot of times we're talking about like, oh, conversion rate, whatever. And I know that on Lead Simple, right, you can look at the conversion rates of different salespeople, but then people ask us like, well, what is a good conversion rate for my area? And we always say, well, it also depends on like the person, that, you know, how good you're targeting your ideal client. And it's always this nuanced answer. But you guys have worked with a lot of, you know, property management companies specifically in terms of sales. So from your experience, you can give ranges. Like, what is a number that should like get the alarms going? What are numbers that are like, okay, we should be worried, but we're not like panic mode? Right. And then what is like, oh, actually you're doing pretty okay. Like nothing's perfect, but this is like, okay. Just give us some context.
Well,
sorry, we asked you a bunch of questions
no,
just then.
Right. No. Both of us have so much to say. One thing to keep in mind is that all leads are not created equal. So if I get a referral from a realtor that says, I have an investor who wants to rent their property out, I referred her to you as a property management company, that lead is much more warm than a lead that goes, say, from a company like All Property Management, it goes to one website and 5 different people are calling them, and there's not very specific language on that capture site about who they serve, right? So if you have a high conversion rate with a colder lead, you're doing something right. If you have a high conversion rate with a colder lead, because if you have a warmer lead, like my friend wants you to manage your property, you're a lot more likely to close that one, right? So that just said, overall, all leads are not created equal in that sense. And Milissa, do you have more to add to that?
Oh, no, I completely agree with that, because people ask us all the time too. They want to make sure like they're that number that should be like really good and it makes them feel good. But every situation is different, and you can look at, you know, different markets too. And there's a lot that goes into play when you talk about conversion rates. If you're looking for like numbers, I mean, someone starting off, like I'm just starting my property management company, is obviously going to have a lower conversion rate because there's a lot they're doing and they're not specifically focusing on sales. We see conversion rates go up when you have someone who is solely dedicated on sales. So kind of when you think of that owner versus having a dedicated salesperson, we see conversion rates go up when someone is solely focused on that. If you're kind of looking at industry average, that would be like, okay, we're doing good. 30% is a good number, but again, it's tough to give that number because there's so much that goes into play. And even if you are at 30%, does that make you happy? Do you want to grow? Where can you still tighten up these leaks? Because there's a lot that you can do to increase conversion rates.
Exactly. Yeah. And a great way for people starting out is if you can convert colder leads, right? At a percentage rate that you feel comfortable with. If you're converting colder leads at even 15, 20%, great. Then maybe you're ready to, or maybe you're closing those colder leads at 40%, then you're ready to do some more high volume marketing. If you get a high quantity of leads, they're not all going to be fabulous, right? If you started investing in like in radio or in, you know, or in 4.5 that like drives you a whole big giant pile of leads, then you actually know that you've tested your proven engine, your sales conversion system on something really difficult before you actually invest more in very specific targeted marketing, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. I think that's really important. We honestly sometimes, and it's been such a blessing recently because so many people are coming to us that are ready to grow, that have implemented their processes. But I feel like it wasn't the same a few years ago when Marie and I started doing this. We had a lot of people that would call us saying, I'm ready to grow, but I don't even have, I don't have employees. Yeah, I don't have any employees. So we would have to refer people out to set that stuff up a lot.
And that's very common. And often it is. I talked to someone today and to someone in Florida who is just been running the business on her own for 3 years and doing pretty well. Often it is you've got a transactional sales side of the business and you're working on the property management side. And that is why we say not to put energy and resources into lead attraction until you feel confident that you can reliably convert them with a sales system.
Totally. Let's go back to like the leakiness for a couple minutes. I feel like everything that we're talking about is that. So we talked about, obviously we talked about perfect client being a leak in the funnel, the follow through the sales process.
I also wrote down like not setting up the right kind of funnel as a problem. Because there's nothing. You don't have a vessel to catch them.
Perfect. Yeah. Not having. What's another big one that you see, or a little one that you see that people overlook a lot of the time?
I mean, just to think of a couple.
I know you're like, there's so many.
You can even think of just like the response time that a lead comes in. That's a huge one. I mean, do you have the dedicated staff, or what's your, like I keep using the word process and system, but what's your process for when a lead comes in? Because that's a leak within the funnel. You know, how are you closing each of these steps, right? So you have this great call with this lead and you're figuring out about them, you're learning about them, you're learning about their property, and it's a great conversation. What are you doing at the end to be able to confidently move them to your next step, whether that is a video consult, whether that's an on-site? Are you making things like crystal clear for them?
Talking about next steps.
Like, yes, this is easy. This is so easy. This is so easy. As opposed to sometimes people, you know, can jumble some things, or I forgot to ask you this, and then maybe a second email or a second phone call. Like, is it smooth, right? And then say you go on the on-site consult, like what materials are you using? Are you, again, making it easy to go through this? And how are you closing to get them to an agreement? So these are just things I'm thinking, but it all comes back down to these systems. Like there's so many leaky things that can happen, and it's just making sure that you're doing it in the best way possible. And also you're asking the right questions, like knowing what questions to ask them at each step is a huge thing. And then also knowing how to answer their questions. So, you know, I can answer this one question in so many ways, but am I answering it in the best way possible to, you know, get the job done and move on? So I think like, you know, these are all different things that can happen, but it's that process and making sure that each thing is done correctly.
Yeah. And it's all little things that add up.
Yeah. And I think to your point, to something that I've observed over the years. So Brittany and I listen to sales calls of our clients. We creep on them.
We have to.
We
have to.
And a common thing that we keep running into is, you know, like a lead asks a question and either a salesperson or the owner of the company just answers it. But, you know, how much better would it be if you got deeper? Because a lot of times an owner asks a question, but you kind of know
how much do you charge?
Yeah, but you know that there are more things that are behind that question. So how much more impressive would it be if you answer the question that is presented to you, but also the unasked question that you know is in there, right? And it's like, it's a lost opportunity. It breaks my heart when they just answer it. And I'm just like, no.
Oh my gosh, you're so speaking our language. Because leaky steps of the funnel, leaky areas are really lost opportunities, right? So we talk all the time about listening for that one pain, the one pain point that the owner is asking you on the phone, and then speaking specifically to that pain. So like you were saying, Marie, there might be one question they ask, but can you hone your skills well enough to respond to the underlying pain that's coming from that question, and just do enough to move them on to the next stage of the process? And some salespeople tend to data dump. We like to say, like, show up and throw up and just tell absolutely everything about your fabulous company, which is natural, but it's actually not helpful to move the client on to the next stage. And we look at conversion rates on a micro level. So how much lost opportunity is there from the time there's a phone call to getting them onto the on-site consultation? And what's that conversion rate, phone call to consult? And what's the micro conversion of consult to signed agreement? And that's where that's where you lose opportunity. And that's where something like what you were saying is plugging up that hole with just a different type of response. And, really speaking to the pain, we have so many opportunities to plug up that hole. And if you got one more person to come to an onsite from a phone call, how much more would that affect your bottom line? And a lot, actually, we found out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super powerful because it's so tempting to think of a conversion rate as one number, as like how many people signed the agreement. But, what you're saying is opening up so many things in my head. Like, well, actually, it's like, yes.
It doesn't fall off at the end.
Exactly.
I mean, it might. In some situations, it might. But just what you're saying, how there's so many different interactions, and at any point during that process, there could be lost opportunity if you haven't thought through it as well as you could have.
And if you're tracking your I love it.
I love that too.
Conversion rate.
TM. I know, yeah.
I gotta show, yeah. I gotta show you our door growth tool. We have like a door growth modeling tool that we share with people, and it allows you to track from each stage of the process, the micro conversion.
Oh, I love that.
So we can share that with you. We can share that with your listeners if that's something that's easy to do.
Yeah.
And it also is mirroring in Lead Simple. Lead Simple's going to be able to track these micro conversions as well pretty soon.
That's really
so
cool.
helpful for our clients.
Yeah.
And what's really nice too with the tool is you can actually tell as a business owner how much money you're going to make and how much money you have to spend on leads in order to get the amount of goals you have for your company. So it's this really great dynamic tool.
Is it kind of like a weighted? I'm trying to think of our CRM because ours has I just started looking at it because anyways, I don't sell. I don't sell, so I don't usually look at our sales CRM.
You didn't look at the CRM?
No.
She's a curious cat.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm just always trying to look at our different operations, seeing if I can make any of it better. So I'm like, what are we doing here? I'm nosy. Yeah, that's a nice curious cat is a nice way to call it.
Overseeing it all. Yeah.
Right. But what you're saying kind of reminds me of what's in ours, where there is like a weight on each stage, where it's like if you move somebody into this stage, the likeliness of them closing increases, or this is the weight of their likeliness to close. So I think that I remember seeing that and being like, wow, this is really cool. And you can kind of adjust it based off what you've seen your sales process end up with, or just the way that you've seen it end. So I think that's really cool that Lead Simple is going to be able to do that soon.
Oh yeah, and it's because of the synergy of how much talk there's been around the importance of the sales process, and we have a dynamic spreadsheet that does that, and that helps our clients plan out the sales activities they need to do because it's all dependent on conversion rate. So, and then in Lead Simple, there's going to be a way to track it. So
cool.
I love what you're talking about with the weight, because obviously there's more chance that they're going to close the farther down the funnel they go.
And there are milestones too, right? It's like, okay, so you move them from step A, step B, but once you're at the property with them, that's a big milestone versus just answering phone calls and email. So I think it's important to figure out like, okay, it's very obvious that the lower in the funnel they get, the higher the likelihood. But if you keep talking to them, but they never agree to like an in-person meeting at the property, then you're like, okay, they're evasive of this milestone. Like why? So I think that's super, super important.
Yes. You just mentioned another one, which is like when they drop off in between the sales stage, how do you actively nurture them?
Oh.
And like, if they are not, that's what that reminded me of. Why aren't they getting back to me? Why are they being evasive? Should I call 4 times or should I call 20 times or should I email? And when we see,
should I show up at their house?
Yeah. Should I send them an edible arrangement?
Yeah.
I know where you live.
No, we don't support.
Parents like, please don't encourage people.
We
to
don't
do that
support
right
going
now.
to their
That's a
house. No. You did not hear that from us. That's
Stalking is not the answer. Yeah.
But that is another leak to plug, like active nurture. Yeah.
What about there are a lot of companies, and I don't see it as much in the property management industry. I see it a lot in like industries that my friends work in, or just as I'm doing research. There are stages to salespeople where you have like an introductory salesperson and then you send it to a closer. Do you see that happening with some of your property management clients where there could be a leak because they don't have the right person closing the business? Or is it beneficial for property managers to kind of have a team of BDMs that do different things that work towards the end goal?
Yeah, great question. And there's a lot of different kind of theories you can read on this, where maybe they want the most experienced person answering that call, right? And then because they've gotten them, then send it to someone that's less experienced. And then you can also see the other model where, we're going to have someone answer the call and get the preliminary, conversation done and then send it to the closer. We've seen both of them. It's really just a preference thing. I definitely think there's leaks when it comes to both of those. And it really just depends on that specific company's processes and how they're doing it. And again, it goes back to those types of conversations and making sure we're asking the right questions. But I do think when it comes to kind of property managers and that handoff there, that the BDM should be fully engaged during the whole entire sales process, right? Like if they are dedicated to doing sales, they know what's happening during that initial conversation. They know what's happening. They know the conversations instead of, here's the story and you kind of take on the rest.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree. Yeah.
Sales is like a different animal. It's to acquire new business. And so the person who's involved should be really good at it and should be able to do it from start to finish.
Yeah. Perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. Just because I've heard more people talking about that strategy recently. And I don't know of anybody other than like a couple people that do it and do it really well. But I think that in their situations, they still do have at least one person that's part of the entire process, and they just kind of tap into other resources if they need to. And I could imagine that working really well. But
yeah.
Like how you were saying.
We've definitely worked with some people who have kind of that initial person who's answering the phone because of response time too. So that's a way to almost like fill that response leaky bucket. Like this person is dedicated, and then but when you do have that, it has to be really clear what the next steps are. I am going to
create another bucket.
The person is going to be calling you back. You're going to be CC'd on an email. Like it's the definitive steps and making sure that they understand really what's happening. Like can't be, okay, the next person's going to call you in 2 days and I don't even know who's calling it right now.
Yeah.
So if you have someone really trained on that for response time that's cleaning kind of that leaky bucket and plugging that hole, that could be a good situation.
Yeah, totally. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think ours is like short enough that it's ideal to have one person. But if you have more than one, Melissa said it, it's all about having a system that is crystal clear for that.
Yeah, because I feel like you could, in an attempt to prevent leaks, you could create more leaks if the handoff isn't super seamless.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that's really good advice.
Yes. Yeah, because I'm with you 100%. Because there already is a handoff typically when it comes to operations.
Mm-hmm. That's a whole different rabbit hole
I
of
know.
the handoff between sales and operations, which we will tackle in another podcast.
Yeah.
Another podcast.
Another day, another time.
And so we spoke a lot about the differences between conversion rates when you're starting out versus when maybe you have more robust systems and stuff like that. And so to a property management company that doesn't really have a sales department yet, right? What would be the first step that the owner has to do to like build a not so leaky? Is it possible to build a leak-proof funnel? Because there are a lot of activities to do. It's like, okay, do I have a BDM first? So I have like another brain to help me like operationalize it, or do I operationalize it first because that would determine who I hire, or do I need the CRM first? What should be the first step?
Well, there are so many answers to this question. But so someone who's just starting off, it's going to come back to the same word. And I feel like I am seriously like this broken record. It's like, oh, system. But it is, because if it's the same thing as what Berit said before, operationalizing other departments, right? So if you don't have, especially when you're starting off, a system, and you can't convert that one lead that comes in, that is going to mean a lot more to you just starting off, as opposed to someone who can actually deal with some leads going through the leaks, right? Like they're making a profit, but when you're starting off, your conversion rate is really dependent on you and how you grow your business. And so it all comes back down to, what do I do? It's winging it if you're just going to answer the phone and expect them to choose you versus the competition, especially when you're just starting off. So I think it comes down to, again, the systems and making sure you can spend a little bit of time and understand what you're going to do, even if it's not perfect, because you'll learn, but having something that is similar that you're going to be doing each step of the way.
Okay. So basically figure out first, like what should happen when, and then it will become clear, sort of like, okay, at this point in time, am I in need of another person who will focus on sales? Do I need a CRM now, or do I need to figure out like my verbiage first before I invest in a CRM and plug in like the systems? Okay, I like that.
CRM is definitely important though too, because there's so much you can keep in your head, right? And there's so much, I love paper too, Marie, I really do. But for me, like we have a CRM and I'm using it, but I'll find myself, because I love paper, I love like writing things and checking them off. But to be able to actually track it, and then even if you can think kind of high level when you're starting off as a business owner getting into property management, your whole goal is to eventually scale, right? You want to be able to make this something that's teachable and repeatable.
Can we talk about how much we love paper? I love paper as well. And this reminds me, like, I love mirroring things digitally also, which is imperative. But I had a prospect who actually showed me, like, he was starting from the beginning and showed me on the wall how he had folders where he would move his prospect's file
on the wall. Wait, on the wall there were,
as they move through the stages, and
like a wall mounted like folder organizer,
like a real life, real in action,
real touchable IRL in real life.
And so if they were bad leads, he would just crumple them up and throw them.
That's awesome.
And it's like therapeutic no, I don't think that was why he had the paper.
You never know.
To be able to crumple it up. See, for him, it gave him a good visual. And it's like that system starting out is, any system starting out allows you to improve, allows you to say, okay, this is the system that I'm following, versus doing it differently every time. That was what he did every time. So someone could come along and say, hey, that might be awesome if you put that into a CRM. How much more could we improve upon it? But if you don't have one thing that you're doing consistently, then you don't know how to plug the hole.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So I feel like we have a lot of really good takeaways from this. There are a lot of leaks that can happen, I have learned. I will not be going into sales because of this, but I'm glad you guys are really passionate about sales. But so I feel like big takeaways are, I feel like systematize the process. Is systematize a word? Yeah, it is. Efficientize.
We use that word all the time.
I don't think efficientize is a word, but I think I should trademark that. So systemize, figure out your perfect client too. That's really important so you can follow your system and set up your system the right way.
Or maybe like ideal client, because nothing in the world is perfect.
Yeah, well,
Ideal.
that can be
Ideal.
debated. But
Depending on how rosy your glasses are, yes.
yeah, exactly. I have a lot of fingerprints on mine most of the time, so that's probably.
I have rosy colored contacts. Yeah.
Do you love it? We like contacts here too. Marie actually came in with a super cute pair of glasses this morning, and I was so excited because I was like, oh my gosh, you got a new pair of super cute glasses.
I look like such a nerd.
No, she looks really cute.
And you didn't wear them on the podcast.
She didn't wear
I was using
them.
a metaphor. I didn't know that you really have rosy colored glasses.
They weren't rosy, but
They're cute though.
Brittany just won.
Rosy colored glasses. I have we can do a whole segment on these different colored glasses that can do all sorts of things. We'll send you a link. But so your guys' big takeaways would be systemize the sales process, figure out your ideal client, have some sort of CRM if you can, even if you're starting out, find something that you can use, even if it's just kind of a beginner's CRM, because there are a lot of free CRMs too, or really affordable ones. I mean, we obviously love Lead Simple, and they're super affordable tiers of that. But I think ultimately, if
Marie's computer,
I just think out of all those things, the big takeaway is to prevent a leaky sales funnel or minimize the impact of a leaky sales funnel. Set your process in place.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true. And I would say think big, because that process will allow you to don't just worry about getting to like the minimum you need to break even or to be settled in with this particular amount of staff. Like, think big. If you have that system, you can open new locations one day. You can, once you have a system, it not only plugs your funnel, but it allows you to just create an empire if you want. I mean, just think big, I think.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because a lot of times, right, when we're talking about like growing your business, a lot of times we're focused on like the number of doors, but
it's more than that.
Other pieces would be like, oh, well, can you expand to other areas? Not just like number of doors in my area, but like, will that free you up to expand other areas? Because you have such reliable processes that you could literally manage a completely different company from, 2, cities away, a different state. We have worked with property managers who are like that. Yeah. And the other piece is, if you are spending time like with a planning, like what should happen in your process, and it brings you a lot of clarity, right? In terms of, okay, do my goals make sense? Yeah. Even like, right, given this point in time at this stage of my business, is it realistic to reach that in a year? And then it's kind of like a wake up call, like, oh, well, if I work hard and I really want to reach that in a year, what does that mean to my team, to myself?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
You're right. That's exactly what we put into our door growth modeling tools, like quarter by quarter, granular, month by month. How realistic are those goals? Do I have the capacity to achieve them? And what do I have to do to get there?
Yeah,
that's
and
awesome.
I think just to sum this up too, it really comes down to the questions that you asked us too, like bad leads, I need more leads. Yes, that's true, but is there something missing of why these are coming like through the leaks, right? Because if you can tighten that up, one, you're building something that's going to last your company forever for you to scale, right? And then if you want to turn on more leads, that's great, because now they're going to be converting more. So I think that's really what it comes down to too, just making sure you have something that is systematized, matched with a CRM, you're really laser focused on your ideal client, and you can convert at a higher rate than what you're doing right now.
And it always leads to definitely the purpose of this. Once all those holes are tightened up, you get more profits.
Yep. Bottlenecks to profitability. And fortunately for us in the property management world, we have RentScale. So if I was a property management company, I would call you guys because I wouldn't know where to start.
I mean, we already work with you guys, and we're not even a property management company.
That's true.
We do.
That's true.
We love being friends with you. We love the fact that everyone says, "Where do I get the leads?" And we're like, actually, we know 4.5 can actually help
like that.
a lot with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and when clients tell us like every lead is a bad lead,
oh yeah, we honestly, for the people that I work with and Marie works with, all of us work with that have worked with you guys, they just love you and you help us a lot too. So definitely contact Milissa or Berit if you guys are looking to grow and need help with RentScale. I said that so weird.
Yeah, thank you.
That was my pitch.
Thank you for having us.
this is why we're not in sales.
Yeah. You guys are like, no, stop.
Really
You're scaring them away. Yeah. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. This was super fun.
We are here to add value, like all things property management sales, like everything property management sales. You have like a crazy burning question, ask us. And we're so happy that we have you when people are saying like, I don't know where to get these leads. And we're able to say that 4.5 can do that. And if they do want to do like a door growth tool, we'd be happy to like do that complimentary just for your listeners. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well,
thank you both so much. We appreciate you. And yeah, to all of our listeners, hopefully you liked this and you found this helpful. If there are any other sales related topics that you want us to talk about, or maybe even pick Berit and Melissa's brain about again, we would love to do that because this is fun for us and also insightful for us. But yeah, talk to you soon.